There is a scene in Pulp Fiction where Vincent Vega and Maya Wallace sit in a diner. She draws a square in the air with her fingers.
Don't be a...
She says. The gesture hangs there, frozen in cultural memory. Then they dance.
It was a teenage wedding and the old folks wished them well.
We're watching the 1960s bleed through. The music, the moves, the aesthetic. It is a portal. Not to the actual 1960s, because the actual 1960s never looked like this, but to the idea of the 1960s, the version we built from fragments, from other movies, from images we've seen so many times they feel like memories. This is what cinema does that no other art form can. It cuts, it jumps, it fragments time and rebuilds it according to rules that have nothing to do with casualty and everything to do with meaning. Every edit is a small death. The moment ends, the world disappears, then a new world appears, and we accept it instantly without question. Because we've been trained since childhood to understand that this is how stories work now. But here's the part we miss. Every edit is also a resurrection. You can rewind, you can pause, you can return to it infinitely, and it will be exactly the same every time. Movies don't just represent time, they trap it. When you watch Casablanca, Humphrey Bogart is still alive. He is young. He is smoking a cigarette in Rex Café Américain, and he will be smoking that cigarette forever. He died in 1957, but that doesn't matter. On screen, he's immortal, permanently suspended in 1942, permanently saying,
He's looking at you, kid.
to Ingrid Bergman, who is also permanently young, permanently beautiful. This is cinema's first trick. It preserves a moment that no longer exists and makes it eternally present. The actors age and die. The sets are dismantled. The costumes are archived, but the film remains. A perfect amber preserving a version of reality that never truly existed in the first place. We talk about movies as if they are windows into the past, but they are not. They are more like photographs that learn to move, to seduce us into believing they are more than flat images on a screen. Andrei Tarkovsky called cinema sculpting in time, not capturing time, but shaping it, creating durations and rhythms that have nothing to do with how time actually passes and everything to do with how time feels. A character says, "In the room, it seems any wish will be granted, any wish that is sincere." He is describing the zone, a mysterious place where reality bends. But he could be just as easily be describing cinema itself. In the movie theater, any time can be visited, any moment can be experienced, any past can be inhabited, as long as it is sincere, as long as it was captured, as long as someone pointed a camera at it and said, "This moment matters enough to preserve." Stranger Things is set in the 1980s, except it is not. It is set in the idea of the 1980s as constructed by Spielberg's movies, Stephen King novels, and a million half-remembered images from pop culture. The show doesn't depict how the 1980s actually were. It depicts how we remember them, or more accurately, how we remember remembering them. It is nostalgia for nostalgia, a simulation of a simulation. The kids ride bikes through the suburbs that look exactly like E.T. They fight monsters in basements that look exactly like the Goonies. They use walkie-talkies and eat Egos and reference Star Wars because those are the cinephiles we've agreed mean the 1980s. But here is what's strange. People who weren't alive in the 1980s watch Stranger Things and feel nostalgic. They long for a decade they never experienced, based on a version of that decade that was already fictional when it was created. Cinema has become a closed loop. Movies reference other movies, and somewhere along the way, the actual past, the lived experience of real people in real time, gets buried under the layers of aesthetic choices and cultural cinephiles. We are nostalgic for movies, not for life. We miss the version of childhood that never existed outside of Spielberg's lens. We long for the version of romance that only happens in Wong Kar-wai films, backlit and slowed down and scored to something achingly beautiful. The time machine works, but it only takes us to places that were already fiction. There is a specific quality to memories from childhood if you grew up in the VHS era. They are grainy, the colors are slightly off, there are tracking lines, sometimes the image wraps at the edges. Obviously, this isn't how memory actually works, but it is how we remember remembering. Because so many of our childhood memories were meditated through VHS tapes. The home videos, the movies we watched 100 times until the tape wore out, the recordings of TV shows our parents made. Now, filmmakers use VHS filters deliberately. They add grain and tracking lines and color distortion to evoke a sense of pastness. Not the past itself, but the feeling of watching the past through degraded media. Paranormal Activity used this.
Institute here in San Diego in Old Town.
So did the Blair Witch Project. So does every found footage horror film. The low quality isn't a limitation, it is a choice. It signals this is old, this is real, this is how things looked when they were actually happening, before they were polished into professional cinema. But it is a lie, a sophisticated one. What they are actually doing is replicating the aesthetic of home videos to trigger our associative memory. To make us feel like we are watching something authentic, something unmeditated, something that happened before it knew it was going to be watched. Cinema has learned to fake its own past, to create the illusion of having been there by mimicking the technology of having been there. The time machine is so sophisticated now that it can fake the malfunction of earlier time machines, and we fall for it every time. In the 1920s, Soviet filmmaker Lev Kuleshov conducted a famous experiment. He showed audiences the same shot of an actor's natural face, but each time he preceded it with a different image. A bowl of soup, a girl in coffin, a woman on a couch. And the audiences praised the actor's subtle performance, his hunger when looking at the soup, his grief when looking at the coffin, his desire when looking at the woman. But it was the same shot every time. The emotion existed entirely in the cut. what we can depict from this is that meaning doesn't exist in the individual moments. It exists in the space between them, in the edit, in the gap where time collapses and rebuilds itself, according to the logic of association rather than casualty. The past isn't a collection of moments, it is a collection of edits, of choices about what to include and what to cut, what to emphasize and what to skip. But what if we edit it differently? What if we emphasize different moments, made different cuts? The same life could always tell a completely different story, right? In Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Joel and Clementine undergo a procedure to erase their memories of each other. The film depicts this as a journey backward through time. Joel reliving his memories in reverse as they are deleted, watching the happiest moments dissolve into nothing. The genius of the movie is that it is structured like memory itself. Non-linear, associative, jumping between moments based on emotional connection rather than chronology. It obsesses over certain scenes while skipping entire years. And as Joel watches his memories being erased, he realizes he doesn't want to forget, even the painful memories, because without them, he's not complete. But it is too late. The process has started. The only thing he can do is try to hide the memories, take them to places the procedure won't think to look, into childhood memories, into embarrassing moments, into the margins of his own consciousness. The film suggests something both beautiful and terrifying. We don't actually control our past. We can delete it cleanly. We can't edit it without consequences. There was a certain man who managed to destroy this time machine. And of course, it was Christopher Nolan. In Memento, he told his story backwards. Each scene shows us what happened, then the next scene shows us what happened immediately before that. We experience time in reverse, moving from effect to cause, from ending to beginning. Leonard has anterogate amnesia, whatever. He can't form a new memory, so he tattoos important facts onto his body. Take Polaroids with notes. He tries to create an external memory system to compensate for his broken internal one. The truth here becomes irrelevant.
I can only make you remember the things you want to be true.
What matters to our hero is the story that gives him purpose. This is what we do with the past. We don't remember it objectively. We remember it narratively. We edit it into a story that makes sense, that gives meaning to the present, that justifies who we've become. I am a firm believer that cinema somehow taught us to do this. Every biopic, every historical drama, every based on a true story film takes the messy chaos of actual events and shapes them into narrative, into rising action and climax and resolution, into character arcs and themes and meaning. Real life doesn't have 3 acts, but we've been watching movies for so long that we try to force our lives into that structure anyways. I mean,
Fortnite.
Ask yourself, how many times have you watched a cool guy in a movie and thought, hey, I'm going to base my entire personality around this? And when they don't fit, When the edit doesn't work, when the past refuses to become a coherent story, we feel like we're failing. The time machine doesn't show us what actually happened. It shows us what we've decided happened. Near the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey, astronaut Dave Bowman passes through the Stargate. What follows is the Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite sequence. A psychedelic journey through color and light and impossible geometries. And he sees himself and touches the black monolith, and he's transformed into the Star Child, a fetus floating in space looking at Earth. Kubrick never explains what this means, but one reading is clear. This is time collapsing. The monolith, the alien intelligence, is showing him something that can only be understood backward. Not moving forward into the future, but moving backward through all possible paths until you arrive at the beginning, at the origin, and the moment before time started. Cinema does this. It shows us our lives from the outside, makes us witnesses to ourselves. We watch characters make choices we've made, feel emotions we've felt, and we see where those choices lead. We see the pattern, the structure, the meaning that only becomes visible in retrospect. That is what we're addicted to. The temporal displacement, the ability to step out of our own lives even for a short while, to experience time differently, to remember what it feels like when time isn't just the relentless forward march of aging and obligation, but something manageable, something that can be shaped and stretched out and savored. It is tragic in the poetic sense. We might go to movies to escape, yes, but what we're escaping is the tyranny of linear time. To rewind, to linger on a beautiful moment and say, let me experience this again. Video rental stores are mostly gone now, but for a generation they were something sacred, a library of possible pasts. And here is what was beautiful. The tapes degraded, they wore out, the image quality decreased with each viewing. The tracking lines got worse. Sometimes the tape would break or get eaten out by the VCR. And that was it. The past was gone forever. There was morality in it, impermanence. You had to return the tape by Tuesday or pay a late fee. Now, of course, everything is streaming. And somehow, that makes it less precious. We have traded scarcity for abundance, and in doing so, we've lost something we can't name. The feeling of this matters because it might not always be available. The urgency of watch this now because who knows when you'll get another chance. You can't watch the same movie twice. I don't mean you literally can't. I mean the second time you watch a movie, you are a different person. You rewatch a childhood favorite hoping to recapture what you felt the first time. But you can't, because you're not that child anymore. The movie is the same, but you're experiencing it through different eyes. And the gap between those two facts is where nostalgia lives. This is the tragedy of the time machine. It can take you back to the same moment, but it can never make you the same person who experienced that moment. There is a concept in philosophy called the last time. At some point, you did something for the last time without knowing it was the last time. You didn't know it was the last time, so you didn't savor it. Just treated it like any other time, assuming there would be more. Movies gives us the illusion that there is no last time. You can always rewatch, but eventually you will watch a movie for the last time, and you wouldn't know it is the final time. And maybe that's what makes it precious, that the time machine only goes backward, but we only go forward.